Sujay Shetty, partner and global health industries leader at PwC India, and shortly will be joined by Cyndrella Carvalho as well, Pharma research analyst at JM Financials. Sujay, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining in with us. And let's start by what you have mentioned as well in the report that we're seeing, and that is clinical trials activity, that we're seeing an increase historically low until 2014, and mainly due to the unfavorable regulations that were there. Now, when you look at it in terms of going forward, what do you think? Let's just start by the basic, the opportunity that is there for the Indian market, the growth that we could see coming in here for the companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very important question that you raised. We had a great position in clinical trials, which for the last 10 years came down due to a lot of noise around regulatory issues, infrastructure, etc. We've now started seeing an uptrend, and the reason for that is that with the geopolitical issues around Russia, Ukraine, both of whom were big centers for clinical trials, there's some thought about shifting it to other locations. Second, in terms of having more diverse trials, it's only 6% of Asians are represented in global trials for big pharmaceutical products. And I'll come to in a minute why that's important. Because that number is low, you need more diversity. That's the second opportunity. And the third is India itself has moved in the pace of regulatory reform in the clinical trial area. Now, why is trial important? It ensures access. Firstly, for innovation, we need to move up the innovation curve in the pharmaceutical industry. That enables that. It enables new drugs to come to the country for our patients to benefit. It helps a highly skilled job labor base to grow in very white collar, medical, paramedical, bioinformatics, IT type skill sets. So it's extremely important. It's slowly rising. It had dipped to a very low, but it's rising. To your point of numbers, we think it's a multi-$100 million opportunity. Its biggest impact is in availability of drugs and upskilling of jobs. And that we should start seeing now because all of the enabling conditions are in place.
So before we, Sujay, first of all, thanks a lot for this very educational and very interesting report. Cyndrella would come and I would ask her about which are the companies which are doing cutting edge work in this direction. But I would like to tell you that, and my viewers as well, that clinical research taking off in India or even expanding its footprint actually bodes very well for a lot of listed companies as well. So a lot of opportunity. And after 4-5 years of hiatus, the entire stock market is again coming alive, looking at the pharma space, especially India focused pharma companies. There's a lot of M&A also started in CDMO and related. So this area is interest among investors as well. Again, I would want to understand from you, how would the Indian companies which are wanting to expand here or invest more, R&D is the way to go, or is it about hiring high quality scientific talent is the way to go, or even adopting a lot of best practices which are happening globally? What are the elements to this which you're talking about?
Yeah, I understand the question. I think the biggest opportunities would be, because this is driven by top global pharmaceutical companies, the multinational innovator companies, in their desire to use Indian patients and Indian sets for clinical trials. The big beneficiary should be, and we are saying this in the report quite openly, that focus your efforts, we're telling this to big pharma, global pharma, that focus your efforts on tier 1 cities, because there you've got large public and private hospital groups like the AIIMS in Delhi, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. You've got the Medantas, you've got the Apollos, you've got the Fortises. I'm not advocating any particular company, but in those cities, you've got maximum bed, you've got infrastructure, you've got capacity. As part of the reason why we did not succeed was because of lack of manpower, insufficient manpower, badly qualified manpower, or data integrity issues. So if you hit the tier 1 towns and the top service providers, like the ones that I mentioned, I think those would be the ones that would stand to gain the most. Then would be the CROs, the clinical research organizations in India, both multinational and Indian, because they are the ones who will actually carry out activities on the ground. And then, of course, lastly, as I mentioned, it will also help patients, but also the last part is the most important part when you have new drugs being innovated in the country.
Yes, that's correct. And I must tell our viewers that there are a lot of mid-cap companies in India, mid-cap and small-cap, which are doing phenomenal work in CRO space. So we just wanted to put this big opportunity. You'll have to do rest of your research. Also, a lot of infrastructure companies in healthcare, like big hospital chains, etc., which Sujay was talking about, will also tend to benefit. But Cyndrella Carvalho is also joining us. Cyndrella, thanks very much for joining us. We also have Sujay with us from PwC talking about how big pharma in India will lead a huge opportunity for clinical research in India. So CRO companies, big hospital chains, all these will be benefited. And we all know that bigger picture is very clear, that healthcare in India in every field is going to boom next 10-15 years. What I want from you is to tell us about what are the kind of companies which are on radar if clinical research actually goes up in the next coming of years, in fact the full decade. Which are the type of companies which are taking some early work here, working closely with big pharma or even hospital companies?
So just to highlight, I think CROs are the segment that we are talking about, and the best CRO presently listed entity, we have Syngene with us which is the Biopharma, which is listed as well. So this is one company which we all know about, and the prospect of growth also looks very high over here. On the CDMO side of the CROs, which is the research done by the innovator companies to conduct all these new drugs and develop their molecules, that is called as the CDMO piece. There we have Suven, Divi's. These are the companies which are present in this segment. There are many unlisted companies also, like the ones of Arigin, the ones of other Synthen, and all these are unlisted players also who are bigger in the market and are well known from India. But still, the market of these companies or the number of these companies in India is still very easily countable on fingers. So the number of companies are few, but the opportunity size is definitely very large. And these companies have been in the business for last 10 to 15 years, likes of Syngene's and Divi's and Suven, and they have created long-term relationship with the innovative partners in the world, likes of Pfizer, BMS, and all these that we are aware about, which are global leading pharma companies. So this is the area where we can see the opportunity from a listed universe perspective. And I think these are the areas and the companies name which will come up with a very strong growth outlook over a coming decade. Because CRO as an opportunity, the market is still very much untapped in India, and we still have a lot of virgin population in India, which will help us conduct a lot of clinical research in India and for various disease profiles, as well as the kind of people that we have in India, the type which is largely a population which will help us to engulf a lot of new research and getting a lot of various new disease profiles, gene profiles and everything. So I think this area will develop and boom in a much bigger and larger picture, as you were saying just now.
And I must also talk to you about a host of transactions which we are seeing. Every now and then we are looking at a lot of M&A which is happening in CRO and CDMO. How is the valuations? I'm sure these companies which are acquiring other smaller companies have plans. Just now we've seen PI Industries, which is actually a specialty pharma company, a specialty chemical company and agrochemical. Now they want to enter the CDMO and CRO space and have acquired two smaller companies, but have guided that in 3 years' time they double the profitability. Can you talk about a bit of M&A? I'm sure you must have looked at, without even, if you don't track PI, that's okay. But I want to understand, are these kind of companies trading at good valuations?
So I think we can even look at Advin's acquisition on the Suven side.
Correct,
that is one
correct.
thing that has happened here. So there is a lot of PE interest also in this sector, and we will see more such investment. We have seen GSAM investment in Arigin. So all these kind of things are publicly available. Of course, the valuations are also higher, and because these companies generally tend to have better margin profile as well as supernormal growth profile. Coming back to Syngene, they have given a high teens constant currency guidance. That is a very stellar guidance to look at, and their margin profile has been always around 30%. So that is the profile of this business, and it tends to give more visibility and sustained earning profile for investors. And that's the reason the valuation profile also also in these deals tends to be on the higher side. Of course, there is a difference between a public and a private deal environment valuation, but they will always remain on the high end of the valuation is what I can say here.
Okay. That's a very interesting insight coming in from both of you, Cyndrella as well as Sujay. Thank you so much for joining in with us.